Hello, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. Wellness Wednesday is sponsored by 3W Medical for Women, a nonprofit medical clinic offering free of charge or low-cost reproductive health services to women in the Seattle area, regardless of income or insurance status. 3W does not profit off the reproductive health choices women make. The information shared in this podcast is the opinion of the speaker or speakers. Medical information is not intended as individual medical consultation, but for general education only. Always consult your own health professional for personalized advice regarding medical decisions. And if you're in the Seattle area, consider making an appointment to consult with us. I'm Lauren Whitting, Office Manager of 3W Medical for Women and the host of today's podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. My name is Lauren, and I am the host of today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to sit down with my good friend, Zach. He is a really creative person, and when I was thinking about some podcasts, I thought, I want to dive into really how creative people operate and how maybe naturally uncreative people can tap into the creative side. So Zach, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate your time and I'm excited to dive into
Me too.
Some stuff.
First podcast ever.
Oh my gosh. So blessed. Okay. The first thing I was going to ask is what is your creative outlets that you possess and how did that kind of happen through the genesis of your growing up into your young adulthood?
Yeah, I always remember being very into art as a young kid, and so it started that way, art and drawing. And as just a kid, I loved it, and that's what I would always ask for, art supplies and stuff like that. And it wasn't ever music until I got a little bit older, and then my brother wanted to play guitar, and so I wanted to do it too because that's what he was doing. And then he started, and then I started, and I've just continued throughout my whole upbringing just doing that. And it's been one of the biggest things in my whole life for as long as I can remember, just being artistic. And it didn't start with music, but it's definitely evolved into being more music and eventually doing it being, what I do with my life. So,
right. I was thinking when you were saying that, how is it started out as a passion, right? It started out as an outlet for you, and now it's your career. How has it been trying to still find that joy and passion in your art while having to then be a job for it? Has that taken away from some of the creative outlet that you once had it possess?
Yeah, well, it was definitely, it started out something that I just loved to do. And then I just was lucky enough to be able to do it to support myself and my wife. And it's the biggest blessing to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It does, when I'm not intentional about it, it does slip into becoming only a job, which that's when,
it's not really true creativity.
It loses its, vibrancy, I guess, when I forget that at one point in my life I would have freaked out if I'd known that I was doing this with my whole life. So it's definitely just with more intention and with more focus. I remember that the best version of me is when I am creating, not just to create something, but because I love to do it and because it's what I've always loved. So
yeah. And would you say, and I know this because I'm your friend, but would you say you're a more emotional person in general? And I'm prepping that because I kind of know you are, but I don't want to speak for you.
Question. But yes, I would say that to anybody. It's not something that I shy away from.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think can be one of my greatest weaknesses, but also more than that, it's one of my greatest strengths.
Right.
And so very naturally a more emotion over logic, more right side brain over left side brain kind of thing.
And it's when you think about that, it's is it the chicken or the egg, right? Were you emotional as a person and that then you wanted a creative outlet, or were you creative and the creativity allowed you to tap into the emotion? Do you feel like it was a genesis of I was creative and then through that you unlocked that? Or was it being creative helped you deal with a lot of those big emotions you might have felt as a kid and as an adult?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that I always try to do is, I think there's 1,000 other people. There's so many other people doing exactly what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what separates, what's really special and what's not is when it has authenticity and it has something genuine behind it. And so, that's always been what I've strived to protect, is that authenticity. And I think it's authentic now because it's always been authentic. And because I think it started out with being a way to process a lot of stuff and a lot of things, in those wet cement years of my life.
Yeah.
A lot of those big emotions and big life events. My mom passed away when I was a year and a half old, and growing up dealing with that and understanding that reality is a tough thing to process. And so the gift of, creativity and a lot of outlets that I had helped me process a lot of that. And, and I'm still in my early 20s and still trying to process and figure that out and what, but I think that my creative outlets and music and, art, mainly music, but art in general, just 100%. It aids to that, and it helps it, and it helps me find health and keeps me centered. So
that's amazing.
If I answered your question.
No, you totally did. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, especially women, and not saying men have a lot of emotions too, but I think a lot of women stereotypically feel things very deep.
Sure.
And I don't think, especially for women for some reason, and this is just through my life experience, I don't think we're automatically drawn to the creative side always. I think it's a lot of times like, okay, we're going to be with people, we're going to talk it out, we're going to work through it maybe in therapy, but I don't feel, and I think almost men go into art easier.
Sure.
In some of the things I've seen of an emotional guy, okay, I'm going to channel this into something, where women kind of want to talk things to death, right?
Sure.
And I feel like from that, and for our listeners, how can someone who has the desire to be creative, has the emotion there, but doesn't have, like you had a kind of obvious, okay, my brother's doing this, I want to do that.
Sure.
How can someone unleash that and help through healing and help through that emotion from what you've seen? And you work with a lot of creative people too, because you're a creative director. So how do you work and kind of foster that? Because you've obviously walked through a lot of different people's experiences and worked through how they got to their place of creativity.
It's almost, for me, what I've experienced a lot is that what you create can sometimes be like a shield and can, it can be a projection of, a lot of things that maybe a lot of, like you were saying, stereotypically females would be more open to just talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think stereotypically, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but men it might be easier for us to let what we create speak for us.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, I can do this, I can do it all for me. But then, and maybe it's to protect from being open.
And like looking different than the average American guy who might not be emotional to everyone.
You're right. Yeah. And I think there's healthy ways to do it and unhealthy ways to do it, because I think that it's overall very healthy to be emotionally honest with the people that you trust in your life. And I think that some people can use art to avoid that,
right,
instead of use it to aid that and help that. And I think I've just strived to be able to, be like, let my art and what I create be, honest and reflect a lot of, the deep parts of who I am, but then also being able to find healthy, safe places and relationships with people where I can talk about it. And it'd probably be easier to let what I create do all the talking.
Right.
But I think it's,
healthy,
so.
I love that, because really, whatever is your natural instinct to deal with things, you're going to want it's comfortable, right? It's comfortable for you to say in art. It's comfortable for me to talk it to death and analyze it and feel it, right? And so I think doing that switch is what we're kind of pointing to, of how can we change it up a little bit where we're not going to get sucked into things. Because for you, I can imagine you get so in depth in the art, right? You get so in depth in the creativity that like you can get lost in it. You're not in reality anymore, right? And so how have you worked through that in allowing yourself, and I think maybe having those anchors to kind of pull you out when you're there?
I mean, I think a lot of people, they want to see their art and what they create go to these, deep levels and extraordinary. And so it's hard to get to those. And some people use unhealthy thing, and they do unhealthy things, and they maybe can, because unhealthy behavior sometimes produces art.
Yeah, like think about like all the rock stars in the world. Like they're probably
totally
drinking and using substances.
Crazy lifestyles,
right?
Really do, because it's wild, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's more about just, I want what I create to be a reflection of, the deep, honest parts of who I am, but then also help me be the healthiest, because it's not who I am.
Right.
What I create is not tied to who I am or my value or anything like that. But, it should almost be a tool to help me, find the most fulfillment in my life and be the best husband I can be, and, all that. So,
right. That's awesome. That's really awesome. So going back to people who are trying to tap into their creative side, what are some tangible things that some people might not even realize, like, I don't know what I would like.
Yeah, sure.
So what are some things that you, as someone who's an adult probably, could tap into and invoke to try and figure out what their creative outlet could even be?
Yeah. I really think that everyone, no matter what, like who you are, I think should have some sort of creative outlet in their life. And it doesn't have to be, artistic or like that. It can be really anything you want it to be. Like for me, it's music. And sometimes when I get sick of, music, I will draw or paint or something like that. Like I'm not saying I'm any good at that, but I do it because it's different and because it almost can kind of, shut my brain off a little bit. And I think that that's healthy for everyone to find. But, it can be creativity in any form. It can be like one of the more obvious mediums like music or art, but then it could also be just, journaling or doing anything like, I don't know, organizing your pantry in a creative way. I don't know. Like it can be whatever's creative and fun for you. So everyone's different, and that's what makes people so beautiful, is because everyone's different. And I think that, the minute people start putting boundaries on what's creative and what's not creative, that's where we get to dangerous places.
I think that's true. I've had a conversation with my boyfriend once, and he was like, yeah, like there are creative people, like a creative, they call people a creative. And you're like, okay, who is the law or the rule to like who says who's creative or not?
There's nobody. Yeah.
There's nobody.
Your boyfriend specifically is an extremely creative person, but not in
the traditional way.
The traditional sense. But I don't know if I've ever met someone more creative than him. But he doesn't draw or paint or make music, but he activates that creativity in the ways that make sense for him. So that's what I would say for anyone. Find what works for you in your life and make it healthy for you. So
I think Zach's pointing on or hitting on some really great things, and how we as people can tap into our best self. And that's really what we're here at 3W to do, is to foster women and men and people in general to be able to live their best life in their emotional sense, in their spiritual sense, in their physical sense. And so if you've been feeling, kind of this last year's been weird, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so much is like, okay, we're going to technologies. We're going to watch Netflix. We're going to go on our phone and distract.
Numb.
I think, numb it. I think letting yourself feel through that creative outlet is going to be so impactful, and trying things new. I think that's kind of what we're hitting on, is like, you don't need to go and maybe like perfect being a guitarist.
Yeah, totally.
Whip out some watercolors, journal, do whatever
it's just not
feels
healthy
right.
to bury things too.
Exactly.
Like, and I think whatever ways you can process through what, unless you're a robot, you've felt something, you've had a reaction to just what everyone on the planet has experienced over this past year and a half or whatever. So I think just the healthiest version of everyone, I think, is someone who can process through emotions in a healthy way and not just bury them. And it's good to like veg out and just shut your brain off sometimes, but also like find ways to work through
Right.
your experience in a healthy way. And that's different for everyone. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've hit some great points. And I know that you have had a lot of personal development in the last couple years. And I think your art has only helped that and not hindered that.
Yeah.
But I think you've had really great people around you to make sure that you're not getting too caught up in it. Really,
Yeah,
because
totally,
you have the
100%.
logical people to be like, okay,
Yeah.
this art, this
Yeah.
creativity, this emotion's amazing.
Yeah.
But what's real and what's
Yeah.
what's reality?
Yeah.
For the opposite, though, we have people who are so in reality, so
Yeah.
logical, and people like you and other creative, emotional people can say, "But let's go deeper. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be work and no work. Like
Yeah.
there can be some bleeding in between
Yeah.
the two." So thank you so much, Zach, for coming. I appreciate anything. The last words you want to leave our listeners, kind of your main point that you want to hit home for them.
I mean, I think even just as you were saying that, I think I've just been so blessed to have so many incredible people in my life who see the world differently than I do.
Yeah.
And I think that has done so much to help me become a more well-rounded person, because I think the healthiest version of me isn't the most emotional, like refined like that. Like I think the healthiest version of me personally, and I think maybe a lot of people, is when you're well-rounded and you can see the world in a way that, other people could see the world too, and you can have compassion for people who might disagree with you.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, I'm just so lucky because I'm glad that I'm not married to someone who is just like me. It's like and looks at things just like. I'm glad that I have different perspectives in my life. So I think for everyone, just find ways that work for you that can help you create in a way that just helps you and benefits you. And then two, just find people that might see the world a little bit differently than you would.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but like I think a lot of people benefit from other perspectives, and so and become well-rounded.
And creativity can unleash that. Makes you think differently, right? Well, thank you so much, everyone. Again, if you ever need anything and just want to talk with a healthcare professional and really talk about your physical health as well as your emotional and spiritual and mental health, we are here for you at 3W. Thank you so much for joining us on another Wellness Wednesday, and be well. For more information about 3W, please visit our website at 3wmedical.org. That's the number 3, the letter W, medical.org. From there, you can learn more about the services we provide, book an appointment, or make a donation if you'd like to support our mission. You can also call our office at 206-588-0311. That's 206-588-0311. If you liked this episode, please share it with others and consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay healthy and be well.